Go with the flow. Ride the winds of change. Let the river of life carry you on. What does it mean to flow like a river flows, to move like water, to round the bends of life, allowing ourselves to be changed, allowing ourselves to be moved? And what does water have to teach us about how to live more easeful, peaceful, joyful, intentional lives? Everyone here, we're all familiar with water. It's where we all come from. Every human being begins life floating in the amniotic waters of the womb. When we're born, we become creatures of land, yet water is still part of us. We drink first milk, then juice, lemonade, coffee, tea. We play in puddles and sudsy tubs. We sing in showers. We swim in oceans. We wade in streams. We wash hands, cry tears, pour hot water over herbs, and let it steep a while. We watch the rain fall, the snow drift, the storms roll out and in, the tides swell and fade, the rivers flow. Water persists in a never-ending cycle, falling from the sky or melting from ice, descending to earth, and then being carried along by a mountain stream, or evaporating into cloud formations in its ephemeral, endless pursuit of change. Ever transforming, always different, and yet always uniquely itself, water, like us, lives many lives, moving over mountains, wandering through valleys, tunneling into underground cave formations, tumbling over into waterfalls, slowly polishing river rocks into the smoothest stones. As it cascades from one place to the next on its never-ending journey, from land to sea to sky and back again, who knows where the water cycle begins or ends? Flowing water often appears in our spoken metaphors for life, such as the river of life, the ever flowing river that travels from one moment to the next, at times turbulent, at other times peaceful. And another common metaphor is the river of time. Life calls us on, draws us from one moment to the next, and the river of life, the river of time, it keeps flowing. Who really knows where it's leading? None of us are sure, but we know one thing: we haven't yet experienced this river of time to end. We're just here for part of it. Life and time keep moving, keep flowing, and we follow. We travel along the river for a while. And over time, as we travel along this river, we are all changed and changed again and changed again. In her popular book, Parable of the Sower, science fiction novelist Octavia Butler wove prophetic magic into the world of Earthseed. Her creation imagined a post-apocalyptic Earth heavily afflicted by climate change and social inequity and the desire to survive. And her book begins with these words. Maybe you've heard them before. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. This reality of change, that affects or afflicts or uplifts or carries on all of life is something that every person gathered here, we're all familiar with. We're all familiar with change. In fact, raise your hand if you're not familiar with change. Anybody? We're all familiar with change. It's something that we're in the midst of right now. We're in the midst of it right now because today is the day that I, your new minister, am preaching for the very first time. And while we celebrate our hello, we can also recognize there have already been some goodbyes. A few months ago, you experienced a different change when you said goodbye to Reverend Ben, your interim minister. And all the while, the river of this community still flows. You know this because these aren't your first changes. And over time, this congregation will greet other ministers and welcome new members and also say goodbye to friends of old. It's really just the nature of things. And all along the way, we're carried. We're carried by the spirit of life, the river of life, by our Unitarian Universalist principles and values, for those of us who those mean something for, and by what we mean to each other. There is an essence that remains, an intangible essence that we can recognize through these moments of change. And I must say, I'm so happy to be in this now moment with you today as we travel along this particular river bend in the riverbed. When I first met your community during the search and interview process, one thing that I appreciated was the flow of our conversation, the ease and give and take of ideas, and the comfortable way that I was and have been, and I know I will continue to be welcomed and received by this community. And I share that because in relationships, flow matters. And we can witness on levels small and large. Some even use the image of a wave to indicate broad sweeping political change. We feel the ebb and flow. We feel when the water becomes ice or turbulent. And it helps when we can tap into that flow-like positive energy, that swelling up of joy, that swelling up of hope, like tapping an underground spring. So I invite us to pay attention to this. And I believe that with intentional relationality that we together, me as your minister and you as the congregation, can catch the wave and ride the flow in this community of our new shared ministry together. So thank you again for welcoming me to travel with your river for a while. And now I'd like to share a story. We've already had one. You're going to have two stories today. Here's another one from Christine and one from me. So if you're someone who likes stories, tune your ears or your hearts to listen. This is a Sufi parable that speaks of water and change. The author is unknown. It goes like this. A stream from its course in far-off mountains, passing through every kind and description of countryside, at last reached the sands of the desert. Just as it had crossed every other barrier, the stream tried to cross this one, but found that as fast as it ran into the sand, its waters disappeared. The stream was convinced, however, that its destiny was to cross this desert. And yet, there was no apparent way. Then a hidden voice, coming from the desert itself, whispered, "The wind crosses the desert, and so can the stream." Now, the stream objected that it was dashing itself against the sand and only getting absorbed, and that the wind could fly, and that this was why the wind could cross a desert. The wind spoke, by hurtling in your own accustomed way, you cannot get across. You will either disappear or become a marsh. You must allow the wind to carry you over to your destination. But how could this happen? Thought the stream, and the wind replied, by allowing yourself to be absorbed in the wind. This was not acceptable to the stream. After all, it had never been absorbed before. It did not want to lose its individuality. And once having lost it, how was one to know that it could ever be regained? The wind, said the sand, performs this function. It takes up water, carries it over the desert, and then let it fall again. Falling as rain, the water again becomes a river. How can I know this to be true? It is so. And if you do not believe it, you cannot become more than a quagmire. And even that could take many, many years. And it is certainly not the same as the stream you are now. But can I not remain the same stream that I am today? You cannot in either case remain so, the whisper said. Your essential part is carried away and forms a stream again. You are called what you are, even today, because you do not know which part of you is the essential one. When it heard this, certain echoes began to arise in the thoughts of the stream. Dimly, it remembered a state in which it, or some part of it, had been held in the arms of the wind. It also remembered, or did it, that this was the real thing, not necessarily the obvious thing to do. And so the stream raised its vapor into the welcoming arms of the wind, which gently and easily bore it upwards and along, letting it fall softly as soon as it reached the mountain many, many miles away. And because it had its doubts, the stream was able to remember and record even more strongly in its mind the details of the experience. It reflected, yes, now I have learned my true identity. Thus ends our parable. Eventually, in the water cycle, all rivers reach the sea, or as this story teaches, all streams reach the sky and come back to earth again. For some spiritual seekers, this can be a metaphor for returning to the great vastness that is beyond our individual earthly lives. For some, it can be a metaphor for community, that which is beyond ourselves and our individual rivers, streams, or tributaries. The original Unitarian Universalist water ritual, it was called a water ritual, the first time, included 8 women bringing together water from 8 different sources, including water from rain, rivers, and oceans. And when we merge our waters during today's Waters of the World ceremony, we will symbolically return to the ocean of our community from wherever the summer has taken us, or this past year has taken us, near or far. The symbolism of this water ceremony, it can be interpreted in various ways, but one way is to use it as a time to come together and collectively begin our own water cycle, if you will, for the new liturgical year. And so that's a little bit about what water ceremony is. And in a moment, we're going to experience it. So I invite you, as you begin to participate and experience this ritual, to think about these watery metaphors, the rivers of our own lives and how we flow to connect with others as we merge our waters together here today. You might think about what flow means to you. Where do you find flow or change in your own life? What does this act of collecting, carrying, and merging waters have to teach us about community? We will now begin our Waters of the World ceremony.